right, good afternoon. My name is Christopher Wright, and I currently serve as the president of the Rolla Community Teachers Association. I welcome each of you to this year's School Board Candidate Forum. At this time, I would like to introduce to you our official timekeeper, Mr. Richard Anderson. He teaches 7th grade science at Rolla Junior High. Along with Mr. Anderson, I would like to welcome Matt Wacker. Matt comes to us from local Channel 6 and will serve as our moderator for this evening's forum. And he will introduce us to the candidates as well as go over the guidelines for this afternoon.
Thank you, Christopher. We have the opportunity this evening to hear from 3 candidates for the Rolla Public School Board. These candidates are here to tell us what they would like to accomplish in Rolla Public Schools if they are elected. We will hear from Shannon Lusk, Jim Packard, and Bill Parsons. Shannon Lusk and her husband Braden have 2 daughters in the Rolla School District, a 3rd grader at Truman and a 5th grader at Rolla Middle School. Shannon grew up visiting Rolla, where her mother was a Rolla High School graduate and her grandparents started Key Sports Shop. Shannon graduated from Jackson High School and then attended UMR, which now of course is S&T, where she lettered in basketball and earned her civil engineering degree. She also has a PhD in mining engineering from S&T and worked for Elgin Surveying while in graduate school. Shannon has teaching and administrative experience lecturing classes and coordinating an online program at the college level. She loves to be involved in her daughter's education and activities. She has coached several of their teams and is currently president of the Truman PTO and the secretary/membership coordinator for the RMS PTO. Her Friday mornings are spent volunteering in the RMS library. Shannon is a member of Emmanuel Lutheran Church and is the president-elect of Coterie of S&T, a philanthropy group that provides scholarships to female students at Missouri S&T. Jim Packard is married with 2 children and has been a resident of Rolla for 30 years. His wife, Sheila, is a retired speech and language pathologist who worked 22 years for Rolla Public Schools. Their children, Ian and Alyssa, graduated from Rolla High School and Missouri S&T. Jim has a Bachelor of Science degree in Mechanical Engineering from the University of Kansas and a Master of Business Administration from the University of Michigan. He is a registered professional engineer in the states of Missouri and Kansas. Jim retired from Missouri S&T at the end of 2017 as Director of Facilities Operations and has served 3 terms on the Rolla School Board. Bill Parsons and his wife Tracy moved to Rolla in 1996. They have 2 daughters. Their oldest daughter was an honor student at Rolla High School and is currently attending Southeast Missouri State University. Their younger daughter is a current honor student at Rolla High School. From 1995 to 1997, Bill worked as a paraprofessional for St. James School District. In 2004, Bill founded and built a successful automotive repair and maintenance business. Bill graduated from Lynn State Technical College with an associate in automotive technology. The guidelines for this evening are as follows. In alphabetical order, each candidate will be given 3 minutes to give an opening statement. Each candidate will be asked questions on a rotating basis with a 2-minute time limit for responses. In reverse alphabetical order, each candidate will be given 2 minutes for closing statements. At this time, each candidate will be given 3 minutes to present their opening statements. Candidates, please keep watch of our timekeeper here. He will indicate the elapsed time at 2 minutes, 1 minute, 30 seconds, and finally when time is up. First up, I present Shannon Lusk.
Hello, thank you so much for inviting me here tonight. I'm very excited to have the opportunity to talk to you about our school district and to talk to you a little bit about why I am running for the school board. As you heard in my introduction, and thank you very much for that, I do have 2 daughters in the school district, a 3rd grader and a 5th grader, and I am passionate about their education. As a result, I'm involved in their schools. I want to know their teachers, I want to be around the school, you want to hear what's happening, and so what that looks like now is a lot of PTO and volunteering, which I love to do. I get the opportunity to talk to and meet more of the students, the parents, the teachers, the staff, and you talk about the school, you talk about what's going on, you get a lot of questions, and I like to be able to help answer these questions. Some of them you can answer simply as a parent because you've been in the school. Other questions you can answer because you're PTO and maybe there's ways you can help. And also you can volunteer just to help out. However, you do get questions that you can't really address within the scope of volunteering and PTO. And when the positions came open on the school board, I did have some friends approach me about running. And I did some research, and through a lot of careful prayer and consideration, I decided that this would be a way that I could help serve the families in our district, help to answer maybe more of those questions, and help set the course for our school district, because again, I am passionate about the education of our students. If you've looked at any of my campaign material, I kind of have three main pillars. I've broken it down into education, safety, and opportunity. Education's pretty straightforward. We are a school district. Our main mission is to educate the children in our community. Safety, this is a growing concern. This day and age, it can't be ignored. Just yesterday, Governor Parsons signed an executive order creating a Missouri School Safety Task Force. And so these are serious issues, and I think as a community, we want Rolla to be on the end of the spectrum where we are setting the standard for what a safe school looks like, as opposed to waiting to maybe get some state minimum standards from this task force. Rolla's not a state minimum school, so I definitely want to get ahead of that. Finally, opportunity. This is a huge section that encompasses basically everything that's outside of your core subjects, and we have so many opportunities available to our students, and a lot of that is because we have very passionate and engaged teachers that give them these opportunities. There's cool field trips, clubs, organizations. You get down to athletics, the music program, debate. I mean, the list goes on, and these are so important because we want our kids to be well-rounded students. We want them to be engaged in their education, and these are ways they can find their niche, find their fit, get their friends, network throughout the state as they go to state competitions, and so it's important as a school board that we support those things. Anyway, I'm excited about the questions, and thanks again for inviting me.
Thank you, Mrs. Lusk. Next up, Mr. Jim Packard.
Yeah, I want to thank the Rolla Community Teachers Association for sponsoring this forum. I'm running for re-election to the Rolla School Board because I have a passion to serve the students and the community. I've been blessed with serving 3 terms on the school board, and throughout that time, the school board and the administration have always worked collaboratively to find solutions to problems and opportunities that confront the district. Those solutions have always been centered on what is best for our students. I think that's important. The district has accomplished a lot in those 3 terms I've been on the board. These include moving the 9th grade to the high school, starting or expanding our pre-K program to all 3 elementary schools. We reestablished the 7th grade activities and sports. We've installed and improved security. We built 3 additions to the high school at that time. We've added to the Rolla Middle School and also to Rolla Junior High, and we've made athletic facility improvements. I've demonstrated financial stewardship and fiscal management expertise. I believe in the conservative management of district finances and also believe the district is operated well financially. I also feel I'm the best candidate for the position because I've had a lot of facilities management experience, and I can provide some valuable oversight as we look to implement the long-range facility plan. I support the district's mission, beliefs, and goals. They are important. It's the role of the board to exercise general supervision over the schools and to provide the resources. But we have a lot of roles in policy making, evaluating district programs, staffing and evaluation of staff, etc. We only have 1 employee, however, that's the superintendent, and we hold him responsible for implementing our policies. The board is accountable to the electorate, so that's why we're here today. Rolla Public Schools has great teachers and administrators who work in concert to meet the goals of the district. I want all of our students to have the same opportunities I had growing up in a little town in Kansas. Caring teachers, family engaged in our education, and a community proud of the system. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Packard. Up next, Mr. Bill Parsons.
I left my bio kind of short, so I want to tell everybody a little bit more about me, the people that may not know. Like I said, me and my wife moved here in 1996. I thought it was 95. She keeps telling me it's 96, so it must be that. When she got her job and I was not having to be the main breadwinner in the family or between us, I decided to go to St. James Schools and become a paraprofessional. I had a teacher in high school that was always on my back about becoming a teacher. So I tried that for a while, and I enjoyed that. And I got to do lots of good things. I worked in a behavior disorders classroom. So when people talk about IEPs, I know all about them. I had one as a kid, so I know a lot more about them than a lot of people. So I got to deal with kids with Tourette's, autism. I got to work with counselors and speech therapists, nurses, school nurses, and I got to deal with a lot of things that are unpleasant about school districts. I got to deal with kids that were abused, kids that had social problems, so kids that had economic problems. I snuck food in kids' backpacks on Friday so they'd have food on over the weekend. I had kids come into our classrooms that, you know, were wearing the same clothes they wore on Friday on Monday. And it wasn't because they were on the top of the laundry list. It was because they just hadn't been home all weekend. So I know some of the difficulties that goes on in school systems. I also am very passionate about trades. I didn't go to a four-year college. I don't have the degrees these people have, but yet I've never had to work for a job. I've never worked more than 3 days for a job. I've never had to worry about job security because I had a trade. I had a skill. I've never worried about having to pay our bills and never put clothes on our kids' backs. All because of a trade that I learned in high school. It started me in high school. Facts of the matter is, 1/3 of the kids that graduate Rolla High School will not go to college. The other 2/3 won't go to college. 30% of them won't graduate college. And we do a lot here to get kids to go to college. And I hope that all kids go to college. But I think we need to focus more on trades. If you go to any business in this town, they're all looking for employees. Not just automotive trades, in building, construction, Lowe's, Menard, any business in town is looking for employees that aren't college graduates. And I think that Rolla Public Schools have great opportunities for those kids. And I'd like to see us advance those opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parsons. That concludes the opening statements from our candidates. We will now begin with the round of questions. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to address the question. This first question goes to Mr. Packard. What motivates you to want to become a board member, or in your case, to stay on the school board? What particular skills or experiences qualify you to serve as a school board member?
Thank you. Well, I was motivated again by a desire to give back and serve the community by using the skills and abilities I've been given. That was 9 years ago. It stays the same today. I still have that motivation and feel I can contribute to a lot as a member of the Board of Education. I've served 8 of those 9 years on the audit committee, so I understand the finances of the board. I'm blessed with the ability to understand and make sense of numbers, just ask any of my fellow board members, and also have experience of managing a large organization. In 2010, in September, I proposed that S&T convert the campus to geothermal energy, and also to shut down the steam plant on campus. The proposal quickly became a project and was completed less than 4 years later. It reduced energy by more than 50% on campus and saved $1.2 million per year, which is going to pay for the system over time. If you're interested, you can go visit geothermal.msd.edu and read more about it. So I also lobbied to get air conditioning put in Pullman, and anybody that's been in a graduation there can understand how that impacts the community. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Packard. Mr. Parsons, same question to you. What motivates you to want to become a board member? What particular skills or experiences qualify you to serve as a school board member?
I've always wanted to serve my community. I have several family members that are board members, some are not in Rolla, but other places, and friends in my hometown of Poplar Bluff that are board members that I respect, and they've always pushed me to try to serve my community and become a board member. As far as skills as to become a board member, I'm passionate about the programs here. Like I said, I've worked in the school system. I understand some of these teachers' needs, some of the problems that are facing these school systems. I understand the safety concerns, and I think they're very important. I think the technology is a vast struggle for school systems, and I'd like to have the opportunity to help kids with those challenges, and also see our community get a better workforce. Our community, the average household income in Rolla, Missouri is $34,000 a year. I'd like to see that higher. There's a lot of people out here on the workforce that don't make enough money. They don't make enough money because they don't have skills. They don't have a trade. They don't have the education that they need to make more money. I'd like to see that better. That's, if I get the chance to become on a board, that's exactly what I'll do. I'll make things better.
Thank you, Mr. Parsons. Mrs. Lusk, your turn. Same question. What motivates you to want to become a board member, and what particular skills or experiences qualify you to serve as a school board member?
Okay, thank you. I touched on this in my introduction, that I want to serve this community. I want to serve the families in our district, and I want to be able to help more, and the need is to give all of the kids in our community an excellent education, and I want to help with that. What skills do I have? Well, I'm an engineer. The work I did was in land development. Actually, when I worked for Elgin Surveying, we were doing the expansions at Wyman and Truman. So I did those site plans. It's funny where life lands you back. So I think those skills would help as we look at our facility improvements and the construction that will be happening. I also, while in Kentucky, was appointed by Governor Beshear to serve on the Kentucky Mining Board. I was chairperson of that board. It was made up, there were 3 union representatives and 3 industry representatives, and I was the neutral academic chairman. And through that, there were a lot of tough votes. Oftentimes, I was the deciding votes, and you're making decisions about people's careers and their futures. You're making decisions about who they're going to go back and work with. A lot of the cases were minors who had lost their certification due to drug abuse. So not only are you looking at that you want to help that minor be rehabilitated, you want to look at you don't want to send them back to work with minors if they're going to be on drugs, and these are serious decisions, and that was a great learning experience for me. I did that for 4 years, and I think that has equipped me to be on this board, to be a strong voice, not afraid of a vote. I'm not afraid to stand on my beliefs. So I think that will also help me to serve on the board. And finally, just like I said, I'm actively serving the schools. I'm in there. I want to help, and I want to serve more. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Lusk. Next question, we begin with Mr. Parsons. The board approved a 10-year long-range plan in May 2018. What priorities do you see in this plan, and explain why?
The main priorities in that plan are the safety issues. We only have 2 schools right now that when school's in session, and the kids aren't running around everywhere going in and out before school and after school, that you have to walk directly into the office and then through a locked door to those schools. We have to change that. There are, like I said, there's only 2 of our schools that are that way. Those are the main priorities in that plan. Now, there are lots of other things in that plan that I think we should do too. You know, the auditorium and the gymnasium that they've applied for the high school is a great thing. I think that would be incredible if we could get that done. The kids work very hard on those plays and those choir concerts and those bands, and they deserve a good place to play. Our gymnasium is not air conditioned. If you had a daughter that played volleyball, you would understand that. It's very hot in there in the season. So I think that those things would be the best of those things would be what we need to do on those 10-year plans. Those are the 2 most important things, I think.
Thank you, Mr. Parsons. Mrs. Lusk, your turn.
Okay, great. Again, as I touched on in my introduction, safety. I'm with Bill on that. We got to improve our safety. I've walked into Truman Elementary during the day with kids there, and no one has seen me. There were no admins in the office. Often they are, but they weren't that time, and as a parent, that's frightening. And the schools are varying degrees of safety, and I think as a district, we need to shore that up, and we should have safety best practices, protocols, things. So you know, if you're going in a Rolla school district building, this is the expectation of safety, and this is what you have to do to get in. So I definitely think that's a priority. I also think catching up our facilities to the size of our district, and that includes the auditorium and the gymnasium, that should be important because that fits in with the opportunities and just recognizing that we have 4,000 students. We've grown and we need to accommodate that growth. Finally, you look in that plan and there's a lot of maintenance issues, and I think it's important that we don't get distracted by new things because we have to make sure we continue to maintain our buildings so nothing falls behind and causes bigger problems. So those are the priorities I see. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Lusk. Mr. Packard?
I served on that 10-year long-range plan committee, so I maybe know too much about it to get it in 2 minutes. But the board has studied the plan and determined that the greatest current needs are these 7 items. So we talked about safety and security upgrades, the performing arts and auditorium at RHS, RJH band, music, and physical education renovation expansion. Neither at the high school nor at junior high do we have enough space for our bands, classrooms. Science lab renovations at the junior high. Early childhood program expansion, the Truman Elementary Library, and RTI building needs for including new and repurposed lab spaces and rebuilding the restrooms. This is related mainly to improving instructional spaces used by students, but we do have the auditorium that is a holdover from the previous plan. So we're going to survey the patrons of the district to narrow it down to an affordable project and hopefully have a bond issue next year. And from those results, we'll form that. The total cost of the needs of the district in that plan are over $57 million. Now, I did some calculations from the plan. RPS has 800,000 square feet of space with a replacement value of over $200 million. Factors that are used should say that 1 to 2% of your current replacement value should be used in maintenance to keep your facilities from degrading and keep them modern. So hopefully we can do that. That's one of our CSIP goals. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Packard. Next question, begin with Mrs. Lusk. What do you see as the greatest challenges facing the Rolla Public School District?
Well, as we're talking about, I think the greatest challenge is allocation of resources. We've just done this long-range plan. What is the most important? How do we decide that? How do we work with the community to figure out what's most important? And along with that, it's not just our facilities. I think our district makes it a priority to pay our teachers and employees well so that we can compete and get the most talented people. And then once we get people, that they want to stay here. And I think that's important. So that's also in the mix with the facilities, is making sure we keep good people. Now, when it goes to the facilities, you know, I always say the best way to have a good idea is to have lots of ideas. And as we go through this, it's, yes, money to build, but then are there other ways to get that money? I know we're getting a very active alumni association. The high school I came from, they take a lot of donations, they partner with businesses and that sort of thing. And I would like to see as a board, what are the other options to raise some money to do some of these projects? Also, Jim touched on it, $57 million to do all the bigger options in the facilities plan. And this year's budget was just under $50 million. That just kind of gives you kind of a ballpark feel for how much money that we are talking about. I also think safety is going to be the biggest challenge, because when you go out and try to sell safety, you can't have a pretty picture of a gym or an auditorium, but it needs to be done. And so I think that will be a challenge to get everyone engaged in making sure that our kids are safe, because that is very important and the most important to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Lusk. Same question to you, Mr. Packard.
Okay, well, I view legislative action and inaction as the greatest challenge to the school district. You know, each year we're concerned with the level of financial support that we get for the foundation formula and for categoricals such as busing, and until the budget's passed, we don't know. Due to objections from the legislature, the Missouri learning standards were modified twice within a couple of years, and the state assessments were also changed twice. So the result of that is that we're denied the information that we need to, on performance that we use to improve our instruction, that you use. So the legislature this year is considering plans to expand charter schools again, and also create the Missouri Empowerment Scholarship Account Program, and in addition to allowing educational savings accounts to be used for private schools, it also would change the way students can transfer between low-performing schools and districts. I have several opinions about this. I think charter schools are fine, but they need to be held to the same standards as public schools. So both of these pieces of legislation reduce the amount of money that's available for public schools, and we know that that is in short supply. The legislation passed the House that would prevent us from beginning school before 14 days before Labor Day. And I feel that's a local issue that we should decide, not the state legislature. And the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act idea is up for reauthorization in Congress, and the hope is for improved implementation and better funding. But I read an article recently that 40% of a special education teacher's time is spent on paperwork. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Parsons, your turn.
So I think that technology is one of the most difficult things for schools. Right now, our elementary schools, all of the kids have one-on-one computers except kindergarten, and I understand they're going to have that next year. My daughter comes home, a lot of her stuff is on a computer. A lot of kids don't have a computer. A lot of people don't have computers at home. And keeping the technology that they have in their pockets is probably another great difficulty for teachers in the school system. Safety is a big issue. Again, it's today's day and age, safety is everybody's concern. Another difficulty I think in the Rolla schools as far as students and getting things done is that there's no career class, really, a mandatory career class for students here. So when we had the counselors here, they talked about meeting with every senior and discussing what they were going to do with the rest of their career. Well, by the time their senior year, if you meet with a senior in January of their senior year and they decide that they think they want to go into nursing and they haven't had any classes towards nursing, that's pretty tough to understand how they're going to get that way. It's pretty tough to start right then. I think if we had a designated careers class starting in 8th and 9th grade, that these kids would have a better path of where they want to go. Right now, there's a task force for that, and Matt Duncan's on that task force, and I think that would be a great thing and a great challenge for our schools to start. But technology is I think one of our schools' greatest challenges, is trying to keep the kids in technology and keep the teachers what they need in technology to teach.
Thank you, Mr. Parsons. This next question regards safety, something each of you have already touched on. What safety initiatives do you think would benefit the district? We begin with Mr. Packard.
Well, ensuring our public schools remain among the safest place for students, faculty, staff, and visitors is a top priority for every school district. Safety of public schools must be a community-focused event or effort. This requires the collaboration of those who govern and manage schools, the parents, as well as law enforcement, emergency responders, and organizations that support children and families. For Rolla Public Schools, some building entrances could be reconfigured to provide better security. That needs to happen. Locking and access control systems should be upgraded, and we've discussed this in the board retreat about some plans to do that. We need to continue to evaluate the level of support needed from the Rolla Police Department for school resource officers. Another second officer was added in this year's budget. So as Shannon stated yesterday, the governor signed this executive order. Both Missouri School Board Association and the Center for Educational Safety, which is part of that, are on that. And those resources are available now if we want to take advantage of those. And we can follow the recommendations of the governor when those are released. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Parsons.
One way in, one way out in the school systems, in all our schools, is a dire need. We all know that. These two people have touched on that. One way in, one way out is pretty difficult at the high school, though. I talked to my daughter the other day and said, what door do you go out when you go to RTI? Well, it depends on what part of the building I'm in. I can go out 4 or 5 different doors. So that's one thing that we have to really work on as a school system, is how to get the high school secure. The elementary schools, the junior highs, and middle schools, once we configure those entryways, they'll be secure. Teachers lock their doors on the way to the playgrounds. They keep their doors locked. But the high school is going to be a challenge. I don't know if that's by putting a parking lot attendant in and only cars that can go in, one way in, one way out after that way. But because there's just too many moving pieces in that puzzle for the high school. We got kids that leave half days. We have kids that come in the mornings. Don't have a class in the morning, don't have a class in the evening. We got kids coming in from RTI. We have kids going to sporting events. That's going to be a big challenge for us as a school district and as a community to keep our kids safe. But that's one thing I would like to work on when I get on the school board is trying to make the high school a safer place for our students. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Mrs. Lusk.
Thank you. I've already touched on a few things. Obviously, securing our entrances. That should be a top priority. Locking doors until we can get the entrances configured and get the technology up. Security cameras. I know some principals use some of their budget to add more cameras, but we should make sure all of our schools have adequate security cameras. I met with Sergeant Rapier, who's one of our SROs, and talked to him, and he said there's things like fixing the interior doors, there's the magnets for locks, different kind of locks, and then also it's putting the room number inside the classroom. So it's preparation for should an event happen, how do we help teachers and students communicate? And a lot of times what they found is they don't know what their actual room number is because they're in the English room. And talked about putting it low. I mean, little things like this. So I would be interested to have a security audit or a safety audit of our buildings to see, well, what are the recommendations coming back? Because, say, adding a room number, that's not a big cost. And so if there's things we can do and build on, I would like to see that done. I think we need more SROs. We're talking a lot about physical safety, but there's also, again, talking to Sergeant Rapier, a lot of abuse that goes on with our students, and there's kid-on-kid abuse, and there's these issues that Sergeant Rapier said his time is spent managing crises. There's not the education component, SRO. If you look at the national SROs, there's a education component, there's the informal counseling mentoring component, and the policing component. And he said his time is all spent policing. And so these are also safety concerns for our kids, that if we can figure out a network so we can get the kids the help they need as quickly as they can so there's not long wait periods, and that we can support our principals and our counselors in handling these things. Also training. There's some training out there. There's active shooter training. There's those things that are horrifying to think about, but the better trained we are, the better trained our parents are, and our teachers, the better off we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Lusk. Next question, what experience do you have with complicated budgets? Mr. Parsons, begin with you, sir.
One of my other hats that I wear occasionally is I'm board president of Phelps County Water District. When I got on the board about 15 years ago, it was almost bankrupt. We bought a house in College Hills. We had a water line issue. We had the guys come out to fix it, and they told me that, I don't know why we're here fixing this water line. We're not going to be around next month anyway. And there happened to be a board meeting that night. So I thought, well, we just bought this house. I better go to this board meeting. So I go to the board meeting. I end up on the board. I've been president for 9 years. So I'm very proud of what we've done with that water district. We've come from renting a place here in town, not having any equipment, guys driving beat-up, used pickup trucks that were pretty well worthless, not having any tools or equipment, to owning our own office, owning our own equipment, owning our own trucks, our own dump trucks, from going nearly bankrupt to having over $1 million in Phelps County Bank right now. So I see a lot about that budget. Now, is it as complicated as the school's budget? No. There's only one person on this that's sitting here that probably has seen budgets that big, and Mr. Packard is probably very good at them, and I commend him for that. So, but I have had experience with budgets and budgeting for things. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mrs. Lusk?
Thank you. I've dealt with different types of budgets. Most complicated probably in 2003 when my husband and I were in grad school. We started Lusk Consulting to do engineering projects because we were in grad school and we had no money. So we started doing that, but over the next 15 years we grew it by about 20% every year. It got to the point where in 14 I stopped working other jobs outside the house and focused all on that. So I was in charge of all the money for the company, and this dealt with invoicing, paying our contractors, the budgets, and we had clients such as Dow Chemical, Dominion Power, Barrick Gold, and these are big corporations that have very specific budget requirements. They need to see estimates a specific way, they need invoiced a certain way, and then they also had different payment terms. So we can pay you quicker, but then you get a little less, or we'll wait a little bit. So then I had to evaluate time value of money in those situations to make sure we can meet our obligations to our subcontractors, but still take advantage and get paid in a timely way. I also, at Midway College, was coordinator of an online mining management and safety program. So this was dealing academic budget. So it's, you get so much money per student, you have advertising cost, you have to pay your teachers, and so it was dealing with, I guess, an academic teaching budget. Also, I was a project manager for nonprofit grants. In Kentucky, we rewrote the coal mining reference guide and translated it into Spanish. And that was a situation where you're getting state money, so there are a lot of requirements on how you can use it, how the budget needs to go, and the reports you need to return. And then we were paying consulting firms, universities, individuals, and also dealing with volunteers. So making sure that budget fit the requirements and we were in compliance was also another experience I have with budgets. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Packard?
Well, I have a tremendous amount of experience with complicated budgets. I had job responsibilities of overseeing budgets throughout a 40-year career, both in industry and at S&T. I took several accounting courses as part of the Masters of Business Administration curriculum. I also have experience with, of course, the Rolla Public School budget as a member of the Board of Education and of the Audit Committee. And I spend the time required each year to understand what's included in that budget. The facilities budget I was responsible for at Missouri S&T was over $10 million annual. An example of a budget that I worked on was tied to a grant application. So Missouri S&T qualified for a federal 1603 grant as part of our geothermal project. The grant application process required a breakdown of all the costs of the project. This was over 1,250 line items. I had to analyze each one, determine whether or not it qualified for reimbursement and what portion of that line qualified for reimbursement. So the CPA working with me, they knew the grant application process, relied on my work. The grant was successful in a recovery of $4.8 million to the university towards that cost of incurred. I've also served as the finance officer or chair at my church for several years, and I was president of the Rolla Optimist Club and had to operate that budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. The population of special needs and English language learners, or ELL students, is growing. Their needs can be quite different from most other students. How can RPS better address the learning needs of these kinds of students? Mrs. Luss.
Thank you. So I'm not going to lie, when I saw this sample question, I thought, well, I'm not an expert in any of that. So I went to the experts and I contacted Dr. Reed. She is the director of our special education program in the district, and I had met with her before, and she was awesome. I was emailing her last night, and she was telling me what we do now, how she feels about how things are going, and she feels like we have some great SPED teachers, and she says she thinks we might have one opening next year, but she feels like she's in good shape there. She said what would be helpful to her program would be if the regular teachers in the classroom have some additional training. How she first started saying, as kids go to college to be teachers, she wishes there was an education component that equipped them with some tools to help serve special needs students. So maybe I thought that's something as a district we could do to provide some additional training and perhaps certification for our teachers in the classroom as they get to the opportunity to teach those children. As far as ELL, again, 4 years ago, I talked to Mr. Hounsome to get some information from him. 4 years ago, we had 88 in the district, and as of December 2018, 188. That's a big jump. So you can see we have 2 full-time teachers and 1 full-time aide that pull the kids out about once a week, he said, to help them. We give the families Rosetta Stone to help them in their English and then test them to make sure they're making progress. And this was another situation that a helpful thing that we can do is to provide some additional training for our current teachers to help serve those students a little bit better. So I feel like it's a thing in our professional development days as a district that we could get together and say, well, what would help our teachers work with these students so that the students can thrive? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Packard.
I'm going to start out with the ELL. So as Shannon stated, we have 198 students in that program. That's up from 88 students 4 years ago. We have 1 additional staff member during that period of time, and that's adequate for the moment, but you know, we're nearing 5% of our student population is ELL, which is English language learners. Again, we test those individuals each year, and we've had good success in moving them out of the program, so it is successful. There's probably an opportunity because we're increasing the numbers so much that our teachers need to have more training. And there are programs out there that have started. Carthage, if you're not aware, has a large percentage of Hispanic-speaking students, I think about 40%. And so they can do something that we can't do. They teach both in English and in Spanish in some classes. And there's a grant that they receive to engage those students' families, which I think is important. They also have a program to teach English to speakers of other languages. So they're able to, going to be able to send 50 teachers to get that training, and that may be an option for some of our teachers. As I explained earlier, the IDA program is up for reauthorization. I would hope that paperwork becomes less burdensome for our SPED teachers, and they're able to spend more time with the students because the students are why they're there. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Parsons, your turn.
So for ELL students, I didn't know anything about that either. So I contacted somebody that I knew a lot about it. And she talked to me about there's a curriculum out there called SIOP. It's more visual aids that teachers do. There's learning plans on the internet that I looked at last night. So that teachers would, if they were teaching science in 2nd grade and they were teaching how to plant plants and gardenings, they would have signs and puzzle pieces that had seeds, that had dirt. So when they had and showed plants growing, so they would hold those up when they were talking to the rest of the class, so those students with ELL issues would kind of understand, or hopefully would understand what they were talking about. I think that it looked like a pretty good program. It looked like something that teachers could be trained to help with those children. Like I said, I understand the special needs kids. I lived it for 2.5 years, and they're right. The teachers need more training on kids with autism, Asperger's, Tourette's, dyslexia, you name it. If they understand that problem more, the situation more, it would make it a lot easier on those kids and the special ed teachers and paraprofessionals. IEPs need to be equal across the board. These kids move from town to town, from school to school. So if their IEPs say that Mr. Johnson likes to will take this child out for a walk when he gets excited, and there's no place for them to walk in another school, their IEPs aren't the same. It changes every time. So there needs to be some consistency in the IEPs. Like I said, and the training for the teachers to understand the problems that these kids have would help immensely.
Thank you, sir. Next question, begin with Mr. Packard. What challenges have you faced working in a group, and how did you help facilitate solving those challenges?
Well, I haven't had many problems. or challenges working in a group. I try always to be prepared for the meetings of a group and try to make sure everybody's opinion is heard, and I want the group to reach a consensus. If the group does not have a direction, that's where I might have a problem, so I'll suggest that we get a goal or an agenda so that we don't wander aimlessly through meetings. While at Missouri, S&T had an opportunity to go to a management institute sponsored by the university business officers. A major emphasis of the first year of that program was learning to work in a group. So I was placed in a group of individuals from across the country, various positions. We were given a problem to solve. That was it. We didn't have any direction on how to get there. No tips on how to organize our team, other than the knowledge that we were learning in the classroom. First afternoon didn't go well, so we finally decided that to get there we needed a leader, and I volunteered to do that. So through the week we made our way through all of the various assignments. We made a presentation as a conclusion to the meeting. We were selected as the best group. So as a sidelight, the next year, the second place winner was my suite mate. Am I out of time? Yeah. I did serve also as chairman of the last TIF commission, and that was a challenge at times getting everyone's opinions addressed. We did succeed in getting that passed. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Parsons, your turn.
I'll go back to the water district. Like I said, it was almost bankrupt when I got on the board. We had a lot of challenges in this group. We solved a lot of challenges. I also at one time worked for, well, not one time, about 9 years ago before I started Parsons Automotive full-time. I worked for Procter & Gamble for 5 years as a merchandiser. I was a sales rep for Procter & Gamble in this area. So I dealt with a lot of groups of store managers and personnel at stores to get their products out on the shelves, get things done. There was a lot of problem solving there, but I've not had much trouble as far as working with people and compromising and doing things to make the whole a better, and that's what I'll do when I'm on the school board.
Thank you, sir. Mrs. Lusk, your turn.
I will go back to the Kentucky Mining Board because this was, again, a very split group. It had people coming from very strong biases and backgrounds, and my goal was to bring that group together. Part of it was selfish. I didn't want to be the deciding vote every time. I didn't think that was fair, and I wanted to have the debate. And so a tactic I use is just to ask lots of questions. Even if I know the answers, I will ask questions to draw them out, to get the information so that the group has something to speak about. I also tried to be very transparent. There's always talking back here, and I thought, this all needs to be out in the open. We need to be saying where we're coming from, why we believe what we believe, so that you can have an open debate and that you can make progress and that you can understand why people believe what they believe and where they're coming from and get additional information. That's how you learn. And so my tactic is ask lots of questions, be transparent in conversations and debate, and be open to listening. I think that is all very important. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. An individual school board member has no authority. Only the board as a whole can make decisions for the district. How would you handle a situation where a parent approached you about a student or teacher concern? We begin with Mr. Parsons.
Well, if I get elected to the board, I am elected. So I will listen to their concerns. And if people who know me, they will know that I'm pretty much will tell you what I think when I think it. So I'll either agree with them or disagree with them, but I will always follow up, and I'll pass their problems on to the administration. We have no, like I said, we have no authority. There's not a lot we can do for them as an individual, so everything will have to go through the administration. But I will listen to their problems. I will do the best I can to solve their problems for them, and I'll always follow up on their problems. So that's about all you can do.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Packard, your turn.
Okay? In these situations, I want to make sure that I fully understand what their concern is and asking questions if needed. I also want to make sure that they understand what the process is for getting their concerns taken care of and addressed through administrative channels. I'll take the concern to the administration and board as appropriate to bring it up. But a board member has no individual authority. I can't solve the problem for them. And it's not appropriate for me to be involved in addressing the concern other than what I've just stated. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Luss, your turn.
Thank you. Well, as we all said, the first step is to listen and make sure you understand what the problem is. And from there, determine if it's a crisis situation. Is it an allegation of abuse? If it is, then obviously contact the SRO or counselor. More immediate action would be there. Better to err on the side of caution on that. If not, try to de-escalate the situation. If they're upset, provide information. Maybe they don't know. And as a member of the board, you have information and you're so involved in the schools, I'm sure you would have lots of information to tell. Just maybe there's a misunderstanding or a falsehood or something that you could correct there. So I would go there next. And then I would encourage the person to go talk to the teacher they have a problem with or a principal and go through the proper channels there. Now, in saying all that, if I would detect a trend, like you're hearing the same complaint from multiple sources, then at that time I think it would be something appropriate to talk to the administration about or the board, and especially being a new member on the board, I would want to know if there's background or concerns about that, but that's the process I would use. Thank you.
Thank you. Final question. What are 2 to 3 strengths of which our district can be proud? Why do you see those as strengths? Mrs. Luss, begin with you.
All right, thank you. Well, first one that's recent is yay girls basketball for making it to the quarterfinals. That's a big deal. And why that's a strength, I think, is not only is it awesome for our athletes, I think it engages the community. The community gets excited because our girls are going to the quarterfinal. I mean, that's just a fun way to bring everyone together to support the schools. I also think our STEM programs are a strength. Obviously, with S&T here, we have some great connections and great families that allow our students access to a lot of STEM discipline. And why this is good is because our country needs engineers and other STEM careers that they can get a touch of here in the school, and maybe that will help them plan after they graduate high school. Finally, last but not least, our people. That has been the thing I've been most impressed with in this process in researching the board and our district is the passion of our leaders and our teachers, and I think that can't be highlighted enough. It's a strength because that's what's going to engage our students, that's what's going to grow our school, that's what's going to give our kids other opportunities, and I mean, what's better than that? Good people. And I think our district has that, so as a board we need to make sure that we support them and give them the tools they need so that they can do their job and make our schools awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Packard, your turn.
Well, number one, the overall sense of purpose for the school district is a strength with a belief in people, not programs. New teachers are given instruction about the importance of personal relationship with students. We care about the development of the whole child, so this is good. Students will then work in class and they'll perform better to their potential. Secondly, I think our use of technology, how we use technology, is a plus. We've always deployed it as resources were available there to use it. We haven't gotten the cart before the horse. It's used in many facets in the district. In teaching, Google Docs are available that students can complete their assignments. Teachers can be looking at the same time. To enhance student learning, new this year is the NWA interim assessment, and that's used in math and English language arts. Data from this can then be used with a program called Exact Path. It determines the student's gaps and gives a way for students to work on those gaps. Class Dojo is being used to improve both student behavior and better engage families, and the school board studied engaging families for over a year with a book study. And then the district website and communications platform are being replaced. So that was discussed and approved last board meeting. Last, but the third item, before I run out of time, our teachers are our strength. We have highly qualified teachers and try to recruit the best by paying them well. And that being said, Missouri lags behind the nation in teacher beginning pay, and of course non-urban schools lag behind the affluent St. Louis districts. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Parsons.
I think it's what our school strength is if you ever picked up the career book or the course books for the high school, we have a lot of courses at the high school the kids can take. There's a lot of places they can go. There's a lot of things that you can look at in that course book, and it'll point you in the right direction of where to go, what classes will help you further your education. I think teachers are our great strength. We have great teachers. We pay above the minimums of the state minimum teacher salary. The state's average teacher salary is $48,000 a year. We pay above that after they've been here a few years. I think that's a great strength for us to be able to recruit great teachers. I'm gonna pick on her a little bit, but I spent some time with Miss Harris at Truman Elementary School. She's brought her test scores up immensely, even with the difficulties that school has. Is it has the highest free reduced lunch. It has the highest rate of special needs kids. I think that is a great strength, and I think the hard work that her and her staff have done is something that the school system should be very proud of. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. This concludes the question portion of our forum. The candidates will now have 2 minutes each to present a closing statement. First up, Mr. Parsons.
So, I've told you a little bit about myself and what experiences I've had in working in the community. But I have, like I said, I have a business here, and I work every day with other businesses, and we're this community, and not just this community, but the state in general, and probably the nation are struggling for decent workers and a good workforce. You know, we have, the last time I put an application, I had advertisements out to hire a mechanic, it took me 3 months. I had it in multiple medias. I was this close to advertising on the radio before I found a mechanic, a good quality mechanic to hire. And it's not just mechanics, like I said, it's construction, heating and cooling, and all the trades are struggling in Missouri in hiring quality workforce, quality employees. And if I get elected to the school board, that would be my main goal, is to try to work with the schools to not just push kids into college, but to show them that there are other options. And we have great programs at RTI. We have great schools for that, to start them out in that. There's great schools around here real close that I graduated from, Lynn Tech, that they could go to and enhance their skills. But I feel that the Rolla Public Schools pushes college, and that's great. They push it a lot. But like I said, a third of these kids won't go to college. They need a skill. They need a career. Like I said, I've never not had to pay a bill. I've never had trouble finding a job. I've always had job security. I'm not easily replaced. It's because I have a skill. And our kids deserve that. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Parsons. Mr. Packard.
Again, I'm running for re-election to the Rolla School Board because I have a passion to serve the students of the district and the community. I've been blessed with serving 3 terms on the board. I always work for solutions that are centered on the mission of the district of providing the best educational opportunities for our students. I'm proud of being part of the 5-year process of expanding early childhood education in the Raleigh Public Schools. I feel it will continue to serve the community well. I want to thank everyone for financially supporting this effort. I feel the district should excel in preparing students for whatever their path, career or college. Many of our learning opportunities overlap in their application to either path, especially as things get more technological. The district faces some significant maintenance issues, as Shannon talked about. in the long-range plan and will need to be addressed in the next 10 years. While at Missouri S&T, I used energy-saving projects to pay for part of those projects, with total savings of more than $2 million annually accruing. And I can provide input if needed for RPS. I feel like I'm the most qualified candidate for the position. It is said that your work speaks for you, that it represents you. I try to do my best at everything I get involved in, including this volunteer position. That is how I want to be remembered for my service on the board when my service on the board is concluded. However, I'm not ready for that yet. So I ask for your support, and I hope that you'll vote on April the 2nd. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Packard. Mrs. Luss.
Thank you. Well, once again, thank you for inviting me here tonight. I've enjoyed this discussion. I've enjoyed getting to learn more about Jim and Bill, and I think it's an exciting time for our district. I also want to let you know I would consider it an honor to serve this school district, to be on the school board. I would work hard for you. I promise that. Again, I'm already serving the schools right now, and I do want to be more involved and be able to help more families in the district. Personally, I feel already blessed by the process. I've had the chance to go meet all the principals, tour the schools, talk to department heads, and figure out what's going on and what they're doing. And they're so passionate, and they're so excited, and they're doing so much to help our students. And it's a great thing to see. And I agree with RTI. Matt Duncan is awesome. And one of the things he's done is he gave me the example. He had a student who needed another math class, a math credit, so then he wasn't going to be able to take his classes at RTI, and that wasn't the right path for that student. So Matt worked with the algebra teacher and was able to embed some math into his classes at RTI, and I think relationships like that are wonderful, and we can even take it a step further. Just as you go into the trades, we'll maybe mix that with some business classes, so that we can prepare students for whatever they're wanting to do after high school. And that's part of what our mission is. And I will look at everything on the board and align it to our mission statement. I think it's important to stay on track, and I think it's important to support the mission and not get distracted. So the election is April 2nd, and I would greatly appreciate your vote. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This concludes our forum for the candidates for Rolla School Board. Christopher?
On behalf of the Rolla Community Teachers Association, I would like to thank each of you for attending today. We owe a huge thanks to Richard Anderson, our timekeeper, and Matt Wacker for being our moderator this afternoon. Candidates, your comments have been both educational and enlightening, and I wish each of you the best of luck in the upcoming election, and I encourage everyone to get out and vote on April 2nd. Thank you.
Bill?
Thank you. Appreciate it.